Hey guys, welcome to General Query. This is Fonz. I go by he, him, and his.
Hey guys, and this is Zuki, and I go by she, her, and hers. And contrary to what that sigh might have sounded like for you, Fonzie's very happy to be here. I promise.
I was literally just thinking about that as I was doing it. I was like, oh, no, it's
I
part of the
sound
routine. Oh, I know.
displeased.
I know.
Yeah,
Well, it's another week.
it is another week.
Yeah,
Yeah, a week has happened.
a week has happened.
Since the last time. Yeah,
I was telling Suki like before we jumped on that this week we sound less upset. Let's put it that
right.
way.
Right, because as much as you may think that we sound as hell to you guys, in the openings, please know that we do unload on each other before we start recording. We're like, and this, and did you see that? And
Yeah.
then it's a lot of that.
Yeah, there's
Um,
typically a good like hour and a half of unloading before we before we actually record.
before we actually say anything into recording devices, just
Yeah.
because we know. Um,
Yeah.
how it's gonna go. So we try to really reel it in
Reel it in. Yep.
for you guys.
Yeah.
Because who needs that? I mean, we
Right.
know you don't, right? Like,
Right.
so we're trying our best here, guys. One thing that I do really want to talk about, and I refused to talk about it to you as much as I was dying to before we started recording, was the Grammys. Really
Yeah.
quick.
I was just thinking like what has been happening non-political that we
Yeah.
can talk about, and that's one thing I thought about too.
Yeah.
First question, did you watch the entire thing?
No, but I watched like the musical performances. So
Okay.
like I watched like Sabrina's thing. Obviously I watched Chappell Roan's set. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
What is it? What?
Well, I mean, they were all right. I think they were entertaining. Like I did stay up till midnight watching them because so they're recorded Pacific Standard. We both are Eastern time.
Eastern time.
Yeah,
Yep.
so there's like a good 3 hour difference.
Yes.
And so by the time they were finishing, I was like dead right next to my boyfriend in bed, hoping it would finish soon. But
Yeah.
uh okay, so there were a few highlights from the Grammys that I
Right?
granted for you guys because you guys are probably listening to this 2 weeks before or after the Grammys
Yeah.
or a week after.
A week after. A
Yeah.
week after. Yeah, yeah.
Um, so one thing that really stood out to me was obviously all the political comments by every single person except for Beyonce.
Yeah.
Which, okay, now in retrospect, the fact that she won Album of the Year is actually kind of great because it does. So her album itself is really political.
Right. Right.
So
Yes.
props to her. Like she didn't say anything on stage, but her entire album did criticize the system.
So many, right? Yeah. I mean, I
Yeah.
think, I think, and that's so, I would just say on par for Beyonce, right? Like for, like, I mean, look at the Lemonade album, right?
Yeah,
Like there
that's
was
true. She's
so,
very neutral
but
publicly, but her music
publicly,
is
right?
out there. Yeah.
But her art is
Yeah.
never neutral.
Correct.
Yes, I
Yeah.
agree. I agree.
Obviously, another performance that really stood out to me was Chaperone's. Beautiful. Love the song Pink
Yeah,
Pony Club.
she looked like
Um,
a Renaissance painting.
it was beautiful, yes.
Yeah.
But like colorful times 10.
Right, 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 right. Yeah, yeah.
With clowns all over the place. It was beautiful. And
It was
then
great.
another one that I really liked was the new artist. So it didn't include people like Sabrina Carpenter who have already had tours and stuff. It didn't
Yeah.
include people like Chaperone because she's also fairly new. But it included like Benson Boone, Dashi, who I
Oh,
didn't really
Dochi.
Dochi,
Dochi.
yeah, Dochi. I didn't know who she was before the Grammys.
She's
Her
fucking great.
performance was ridiculous.
No, no, no. She's
Ridiculous.
excellent.
It
Yeah.
was amazing, yeah.
Oh
And
my
then who
God.
else was part of those new ones?
I don't.
Um, Shabuzi, that's another guy.
Oh yeah, yeah, he has that country flair too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
his performance was underwhelming, but I get it. He's fairly
Well,
new.
yeah.
Benson Boone was the one that shocked everyone, especially with that fixing himself at the end. I
Yeah.
really enjoyed that part of it.
You know,
I was telling my boyfriend, I was like, I don't think I could ever wear that suit.
it
It'd
was a
be too
suit.
revealing. Yeah, it'd be too revealing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It left nothing up to the imagination, I feel.
Correct.
Yeah.
And it was riding up his ass. So anyway, what else was there? Yeah, I enjoyed that everyone was political about it. Shakira made a comment about immigration. Alicia Keys made a comment about, I think it was feminism, if I'm not mistaken. Chapel Roan made a comment about
Her folks.
our broken system. What else? Doechii, I think she won a Grammy too, and she made a comment about racism as well and empowering Black females. So that was kind of powerful. Yeah,
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think it's important. So it's also it's worth mentioning and very important for everybody to remember. February is Black History Month.
yeah,
The United States. So please use this time to educate yourself, right? Especially, I think in this case, we're definitely like I'm speaking directly to our audience, which is a largely Latino audience, right? Or like a lot of our listeners are in Texas, and specifically in an area of Texas where there isn't a large Black population. So I think there's like a gap sometimes in what folks know and understand about Black history. And so definitely use this month to get in there in the nitty-gritty. And I think it's important. You said something, you were like, I like that the artists get political. And what I love about that statement, Fonz, is like I think a lot of people forget that art is inherently political, right? When you look at art history or any big movement in, world
history.
history,
Yeah,
art is there,
yeah.
right? To
I
very
think,
much say something.
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure, 100% agree. And um, I think a lot of it comes from finding a voice. And, a
Yes.
lot of the time, art is that voice, whether it be music, fashion, actual paintings, sculptures. Like, it is a statement. It's a political statement for sure.
It is, absolutely. And it's one of those things where it's like, oh, singers should stick to singing and da 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 or whatever.
And
And they're
they
like,
do.
and they do, but that's one of those things. Why what do you mean artists don't have to get political? You know, let's again, Black History Month. Let's think about all the years where Black musicians, singers were invited to sing on stage but had to go to the bathroom outside
Right.
or weren't paid the same
Or their music was stolen for some white asshole to sing.
to sing.
Yeah,
Right? Like, let's be very, very honest about that, right? And again, it's one of those things where it's like, you cannot say that artists shouldn't be political because there has been time and time again where their mere existence was political and
for sure.
politicized,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So yeah, to me, I think it's the right of the artist and it's very much the prerogative of the artist to be political and to
yeah.
express an opinion in their art.
100%. Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah. You
yeah,
want
I
to sing
agree.
along to their songs? You get to listen to them too, you know?
Right.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
love it. I think you're right. I think that was a really nice thing to see at the
Oh, Gaga was
Grammys.
pretty political too.
Gaga, and I mean, Queen, I mean, obviously,
She made a comment about trans people. Yep.
she did, absolutely. She looked great, by the way. And I
She
think she
did.
she was it to me quintessential Gaga at the
Yes.
Grammys, right?
Yeah.
Like she looked
No, and so you didn't watch the entire Grammys, but at
no,
some point, one of the ads was her music video, like the new music video for her new
for
song.
Abracadabra, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Abracadabra. The
Yeah.
video is
The video is
everything you
sick.
would love to see from Gaga. Like
Sick. Yes.
no more Joanne shit. Like she
No.
brought quintessential Gaga back,
Yes.
and I love it.
I love that one shot in the video because it reminds me of the Alejandro video
It
where it's
does,
like
yep.
all
Hmm.
black, right?
Yep.
And they're dancing in the middle of it. It's so good. She's so good. Um
Yes.
and yeah, no, I mean again, it's one of those things like she can do it all. Like I think a couple months ago it was that she released that song with Bruno Mars, Die with a Smile.
Yeah.
And I think you saw like beginnings of her going back into like her style, right? With how she styled herself in the video. But when you listen to that song, I mean, it's just like, what can't she sing? You know what I mean? Like she's
Yeah.
just so talented.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I loved seeing her in the video and in her element at the
Yeah.
Grammy.
And I also liked her performance with Bruno Mars, singing that song in the Grammys. Like, even just her theatrical movement, beautiful. Loved it.
I know she
Yeah.
did great. I loved it so much. I think that those were my favorite, and of course, like the fashions were kind of all over the place in my view,
Yes.
which I
I
think is like quintessential Grammys. You know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah,
just
yeah, the Grammys aren't known for fashion. But I do miss the theatrics of, like, Gaga when she would come in with like this disgustingly massive dress, which she wore a black one. It was pretty tamed down. People were comparing her to Madonna, so that was kind of fun.
that was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or let's
Um,
let's remember that one time she came in an egg.
yes. Yeah. Yeah,
You
yeah.
know?
So I miss that. I miss, like Cardi B, why are we wearing a dress you bought, like 6 years ago with the feathers? No one's doing those feathers that way anymore.
No, I know it wasn't great. And then there was that Kanye West and Bianca Censori moment.
Oh my God, embarrassing.
Horrible.
Let's
I'm
just
like
start with, like, she was completely naked.
completely naked, just naked.
Yeah, like, yeah, she was wearing a mesh dress.
She was naked,
Yeah.
naked,
You'd
which
see full vulva, tits
everything,
out, everything.
everything. Now, it's one of those things where it's like, listen, she, it makes me, it's not even the nakedness that makes me uncomfortable. It's the fact that she clearly doesn't look like this was her idea. That's what makes me uncomfortable
Right.
about
And
it
he was
all.
just standing next to her, like,
In all black.
and then I don't know, just something about the way he was looking at her was disgusting to me. I was
It
like,
was. I no. It was just
no thanks. So
it
the
was
fact that they got kicked out was cherry on top. I was
yeah.
like, good for you guys.
The vibes were icky, the vibes
Yeah,
were
it was just
off.
not it. Yeah.
I was not about it. So
Love the
yes,
videos of Taylor Swift and Lady Gaga jamming to every single performance.
love that.
Beautiful.
Love that.
Yeah.
Taylor showed up at Slutty Prom from what she was wearing, apparently.
Yeah.
Um, hated her hair,
Hated
uh,
everything. That's it.
everything. I'm
Yeah.
like, what are you wearing?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
um, your tours are an economy, and you're telling me you show up this way? I can't.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
just
and okay, let's make an emphasis on the glued on crystals.
glued on,
I don't care if
guys.
that dress is Vivian Westwood. That dress was hideous and cheap as fuck.
Hideous. When Fonz told me that these crystals were glued on, I gasped out loud. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because again, it was giving Charlotte Russe.
It
That was
was.
the vibe, and
Yeah.
I hated it.
Yeah. It was
Um,
not cute at all.
hated it, but I'm like, okay, Tay, whatever, girl.
I like Troy Sivan's idea of what he was wearing, because there was this whole organza like suit situation.
Yeah, yeah.
To my opinion, it was just not executed properly.
It wasn't.
I
I
also
agree.
didn't like the pastels, but the idea was there. I appreciated that as much.
Yes. Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean the Grammys gave, they took away, they
Yeah.
traumatized us. And so I think like all in all,
I also
right.
appreciated the fact that it was all to get funds for, the fires, to help the families in need. And then they also paid homage to all the firemen out there. They had LA Fire Department there, which is great. So
That's beautiful.
that was the
Yeah, yeah,
highlight of
yeah.
it all.
Yeah, and I think it's important to remember like that's still happened. Like the fire isn't still happening, guys, but the after effect of that horrendous fires actually there were two,
Yeah.
is
There were
still being
multiple at some point. It was
yeah, it was
insane. Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
It's still being felt by the community.
Yeah.
So,
I'm still curious to know if it was like actually intentional because I've seen a couple videos of
yeah,
drones dropping
yeah, yeah. And then I've
this
seen the
fire
videos.
bombs all over the woods. I don't know
Yeah,
if that's real, but if it is, that's
yeah, and then
fucking
I've
fucked up.
seen yeah, and then the guy that they think started it, there's also that.
Yeah.
It's like a whole thing. So it's
Yeah.
just all horrible
It
and
is
just,
horrible. Yeah.
you know, so I'm glad that you're right. I'm glad that they made that move. And so I think it was like a nice night to honor those people, honor music, and like have a little fun with the fashions and everything else, especially considering the mood that everybody's in from everything
Yeah.
that's going on
Yeah.
in our country in
Yeah.
general, right?
Yep. Yep.
So,
Oh,
um,
Shakira was another highlight.
yeah, she was
Yeah.
great.
Hmm.
That bitch doesn't age.
I know.
You
The
know,
only thing I wish she would do her nose, but that's just a personal opinion, you know?
I'm sorry. Did you say you wish Shakira would do her nose?
Yeah, it's just
What?
funky.
That
That's
might be
all.
the thing that gets us canceled. That might be it. But you are out of fucking order. How dare, what do you mean?
I don't
Funky.
know. I mean,
It just
I'm not gonna
bothers
lie.
you?
I right, exactly. It just bothers me. I do appreciate the fact that she's really natural. Like
Oh,
her
very
face, yeah, she probably does have Botox on it.
little bit.
I
But
don't
not
see,
much though.
yeah, I don't see trace of fillers, which is
No.
great. I
No.
don't see trace of like, getting rhinoplasty or getting whatever, what is
Clearly.
it, mastectomy or whatever, where you take off the massive from your chicks or anything. I don't see anything aesthetically like she doesn't have her boobs done. That's clear.
No. No.
Yeah. So I think generally she looks great. It's just the nose that throws it off for me, you know? That's all.
That's it, guys. That's it. That's just Fonz's opinion for the day.
Right.
Is that he is irked by Shakira's
As
nose.
my nose, like my nose kind of bothers me too, but it like kind of fits my face, you know?
Okay, so then you just have a thing for issues with noses, Fonz.
I
There's nothing
do.
wrong with your nose.
I do
You
have
do
issues with
understand
noses.
that.
No, I don't. But moving on.
Next.
What other
Moving
good things
on.
are happening?
That's it.
That's it.
That's it. All the good things that are happening, that's it.
Yeah, the Grammys. That was it.
The Grammys, that was
Fashion
it.
Week. Fashion Week is going on.
Fashion Week.
This I did. This I do want to see. I do want to say before we continue.
Yes.
It had been a long time since I had been um blown away by fashion shows.
Yeah.
It had been a really long time. I'm talking, obviously you have your standouts every season,
Of course.
and
Yeah.
I'm talking like for the past 3 years, it had been a minute since I was like, that's great. Whoa, that's beautiful. Whoa, I'm inspired by this. Whoa, this is amazing. Whoa, how could they? But
Right.
this season, especially, I'm talking because couture season's happening right now, so I can only imagine what ready to wear is going to look like. But couture season's happening right now, and Chanel killed it.
Yeah.
Dior killed it. You know, Valentino killed it. Schiaparelli killed it. Like, there's all these brands that are killing it that were kind of like dying brands, and then they revived them with new creative directors, and holy fuck. Good job. Brava. Brava.
Brava.
Yeah.
Snaps.
That's all
Snaps.
that's all I can say. This season has been very, very, very fun to watch.
Oh, yeah, no, I agree. I agree. It's been great.
Even the men's
Uh,
shows have been really great. And I'm typically never into like male fashion shows because I'm kind of like, okay, it's the same thing. Like we use the same 5 colors. That's great, whatever. Yeah, snooze fest.
yeah.
But this season has been amazing. I've been really pleasantly impressed.
Love it.
Yeah.
I love that. So check that out. And actually, I'm glad that you brought that up because that's a perfect segue to what we're actually going to talk about this episode, which is inspiration.
Yeah. Inspiration.
Inspiration and where you're drawing that from. And before you click off, wait a second. Here's what we're talking about. So, yeah, we're all bitching, we're all saying things are the worst, da 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 da, blah blah blah. But yet and still, somehow, all of us get up every fucking day, put one foot in front of the other, and do all the things, small or large, that keep our world going, right? And I
Yes.
think it's especially in moments like this where the world feels very heavy and everything that you're dealing with feels very heavy. It's like, how do we do this, right? How do we keep doing this every day? And that's because you're inspired. Whether you realize it or not, something is inspiring you to move forward, to say something, to feel a certain way. And so we wanted to take this time to talk about that, right? Like, where do we as humans draw inspiration from all the time? I think
Yeah.
it's important. Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
No, yeah. That's a perfect intro to today's topic. Um, so because of the whole, let's just start with like there was this one video that I saw and it was an
Oh,
interview with Daniel Rosberry. It's not the one I sent you. There's another one to it. But he is a very well-spoken person, and for those of you guys who don't know who he is, he's a designer for Schiaparelli, the new creative director, which actually they're privately owned, which is great. Schiaparelli does not have a major house like, Gucci or
Chanel.
LVMH that bought out all these brands. They're independent, which is amazing. Um, but anyway, I saw this one interview and he talked about inspiration and how that impacts people and whatnot. And I think that what caught my attention the most was where he emphasized that inspiration for everyone comes in different ways. And because I guess he does like he teaches a class or something, and he tries to kind of get his students to get inspiration from whether it be art, like artists, throughout history, architecture throughout history, and also other designers, like who are those core designers that you draw inspiration from, and that kind of creates the symbiosis of like art and inspiration. And it was really interesting because it made me think of like if I were in his class and he were to ask me, where do you draw inspiration from? Like it made me think of like, what would that be? You know?
Right,
Yeah. And
right.
you've said it multiple times, you're not like quite an artist, but like I thought it was gonna be like a really cool topic because for me at least, inspiration is drawn from everywhere for everyone. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think you're right. I think what's important about that sort of viewpoint, or like at least the idea of understanding where your inspiration comes from, is that then then it becomes this well, right? Of somewhere you can go and continue to draw, right? Because we're human beings and we're full of peaks and valleys. And a lot of the times when we're at our lowest, sometimes we may struggle to get out of that, right? And like find a reason to. And I think if we put the work in or do the exercise of really drilling into what it is that inspires us, it's so much easier to get back out
Yeah.
of that pit, right? And I think it also makes it easier, Fonzie, to be protected from the noise, right? Because at the end of the day, most of it is just noise, right?
Yeah.
And so I think if we are able to be really tapped into that side of ourselves, what it is that drives us and inspires us, then we can stay a little bit more stable, you know?
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
glad you brought that up. Because I mean, I've been pretty vocal, and the reason why I'm vocal about this is because it is something serious to talk about. So, suicide has been a thing. It's always going to be a thing, unfortunately, that people go through and think of. And during those periods of time where I was at my lowest and I was like almost, ready to end my life or whatever, there has always been inspiration behind it. And yes, part of it has been my family and friends, but it's also been this whole thing of like, if I end, then my legacy, and we've talked about legacy on other
We
episodes as well,
have. We
is
have.
done. So I don't want my legacy to end there. And I know my legacy is also part of me. And for example, you're not the only bride that I've made gowns for, but that is part of my legacy
It
and
is.
inspiration to bring me out of those deep holes is kind of like where I'm getting at. I do draw
Yeah.
inspiration to kind of like push me out of where I am. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree. I think that is exactly what I want to make sure that we elaborate on. And so we're going to take a quick break and we're going to come back and we're going to talk about all the things that inspire us and maybe where you can draw some inspiration from. So we'll be right back. All right, guys. So we are back to talk all things inspiration. And again, it's because we want you to stay as stable as possible, right? We don't want you to end up on FitFam. We don't want you to end up on whatever version
For El Paso people, Fit
for El
Fam, if you know
Paso
what that is.
people. We don't want you to end up on FitFam. For anybody else, we don't want you to end up on your hometown's version of the,
Or TikTok or
or
YouTube, because that
TikTok or
would be the
YouTube.
worst.
Yes, anywhere. Um, yeah, I mean, I think like if
I
I
think we
th
should have a little like definition moment as to what is
yes,
inspiration,
yes,
just so
yes,
that we can put a label on it, if you may.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Let's see. Hold on. I can get you that right now. Let's see if you guys are
While
watching
you
this on
do that,
YouTube.
I'll start singing and hope for the best.
You're gonna start singing?
No, maybe
Oh.
like I was gonna say maybe like a cute little Le Bien Rose or something like
Oh
that.
yeah, no big deal. The one of the hardest songs known to man, but yeah.
Some Edith Piaf.
Yes. Okay, so I have it. So the definition of inspiration is the process of being mentally stimulated to do or feel something, especially to do something creative. The quality of being inspired, especially when evident in something, meaning a rare moment of inspiration in an otherwise dull displacement.
Yeah. The only issue I have with that definition is like, especially in being creative, which I get it. Inspiration is typically
Sure.
linked to being
Making
creative
something.
and art. Yeah,
Yes.
typically. But I think there's inspiration in every single day. Also, can I mention, so everyone knows I'm a designer. Before I thought of even designing, I was painting and sketching and yada yada. Um, but for me, it's really hard. Like, so watching Project Runway, it's kind of comedic to me sometimes. Yeah,
Yeah.
when designers are like, "Oh, I just drew inspiration from the stairway and blah blah blah," which I'm kind of judging because I'm kind of jealous.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, I don't draw inspiration from random objects.
Right.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
I,
no.
I, I low key admire that, but I low key also laugh at that because I'm like, are you bullshitting me, or like, are you really drawing
Right. Are you being
inspiration
for
from this shit?
real?
Yeah, like,
Right.
how much inspiration can you draw from like a stairway, you know,
Right.
or
No,
like
absolutely.
skyscrapers? They all look the same
Right.
for the most part. Not if you go to Dubai, but for the most part, if you're in New York, the majority of the skyscrapers are going to pretty much be the same thing. It's all mirrors, you know,
Right.
like.
Right. I think no, I mean, listen, I completely agree. I don't think like in again, Fons knows this and we've talked about it. Like I don't necessarily consider myself a very creative person, but it's funny because when I have heard others, and by others, I mean people that actually know me, they will refer to me as a creative person, which is very interesting to me because I'm not a sculptor. I don't paint. I don't draw. I don't do any of these things. I actually, for the most part, I'm like, I would rather buy pretty things because I can't make them. Um, but one thing that I am good at is I'm a good writer, right? So I can be creative that way. And I think that's where most people, when they're saying that I'm creative, I think that's what they're
Right.
talking about.
And I want to
Yeah.
pause you there because it feels like you're almost discrediting the writing from
Yeah.
being creative. And I think,
Right.
and I'm telling you this because I'm writing a book, there is a lot of creativity that has to be into writing. Not only knowledge of the language, obviously,
Right.
like being able to self-edit and all that good stuff, but
Sure.
in order to create a story, whether it be a biography, fiction, nonfiction, like there has to be a creative aspect to it because you have
Right.
to be able to formulate sentences to draw the reader in.
To draw the reader in and really actually pour
So
out
before
what's in
you
your
mention
head.
again that you're not creative, let me slap you a couple times and tell you creativity comes from
Right.
that.
Right. No, no, no. And I think like what's interesting about that is like I have really, really noticed, guys, a big, big shift in where I draw inspiration from recently. I would say now about a year since I moved out of Texas again. Um, I in a very almost unexpected turn of events, I moved into an area that is very historical in terms of like United States history, right? And but this whole space moving here has created this huge vector for me of reconnection to my culture, right? My origins. And by that I mean not just my Mexican culture, but actually being really interested in what built me. And I think what matters about that is like I've been doing a lot of deep dives into the women in my family. My mother, her mother, and all the mothers before her. And I think as I've been digging into all of this and writing about it, um, I have come to realize the things that I do, the things that have driven me in the past, it's not just me. It's in my DNA. It's in the DNA of the women that built me. And I see that now. And a lot of that has dictated the literature that I'm reading. You know, one of the huge book recommendation corner right now. I just finished a book called When God Was a Woman. And it talks about, again, the origins of the divine feminine and where that comes from. And just really, literally, guys, going back to the start for me. That's been what's been driving me lately is that instead of feeling like I'm alone or exposed or that things are so bad I'm not going to make it, instead of looking forward to feel better, I've decided to look back. And it's actually been so transformative for me, guys, to think about how did I get here, right?
Now,
That's
as far
huge.
as how you use this inspiration and looking back into like the
Yeah.
core of who Suki is,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
how how do you portray that inspiration onto your daily life?
Yeah, that's a great fucking question. I think a huge part of it is not being scared.
I love that.
Not being
Because if you
scared.
guys have heard all of our episodes, that is her main issue.
It's my thing. It's my
Yeah,
thing. I'm a
yeah.
very fear-driven person. I have been in the past. And what doing this retrospective look, what it has done for me, it has truly chipped away at that fear. The fear of quote failure, whatever that means. Go check out our episode. We talk about failure.
Yeah, it's also different for everyone, but anyway.
It's different for everyone. Um, what is it that I'm so afraid of? And again, thinking back to those stories of the women in my family. And for me, it's important that it's the women in my family. It's not just the history of my family, it's the women in my family because they have been the builders and the creators and the ones that have kept all of us afloat.
Yeah.
Um,
I think
and
we've talked
so,
about this before too. It's
yeah,
like in Mexican culture and
yes,
generally, of course,
yes,
there's a lot of machismo, et cetera, et cetera. But
yes,
it almost always feels like it's a matriarch because at the core of it all, there's always a strong female character in everyone's
always.
life. Yeah.
Always, always, Fonzie. And that's exactly it. For me, that's been the focus. It's like, no, you know what? I'm not afraid. I'm not because I am literally built. The carbon on if of my bones is built from women that didn't have any choice but to be brave.
Yeah.
They had no choice but to be trailblazers, and they didn't have a choice but to make shit happen. And what a privilege it is to be of that stock. So let me not be scared. Or you know what? Even if I am scared, let me do it scared,
Yeah.
right? So that's been huge for me, Fonzie. It's that. It's like getting back to my roots. That has inspired me to be a much braver
Yeah.
individual. And
Yeah.
I think,
That's
yeah,
why when you were reading the definition of inspiration, like my issue was with creative
creative. Yeah, you're
because
right.
because
Yeah,
it is like inspiration once again, like you said, it doesn't necessarily have to play into any art or any form
making
of
something.
creativity. Yeah.
Yeah,
I will mention this,
yeah.
it's completely like way off. Like you went way deep. And so for example, for me, I'm not creative whatsoever, and I get zero inspiration whatsoever when it comes to the kitchen.
Oh, the
You were already
kitchen.
like, what?
I'm like,
Yeah.
okay.
When it comes to the kitchen, is zero inspiration, zero creativity, like nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I'm one of very much one of those people that learns a recipe and copy pastes. Like I can't I like you know how typically chefs are like you can put your own little twist in it.
Yes.
My twist is non-existent.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know this, guys. Are
Yeah.
you serious?
Yeah, like I love the process of cooking,
Sure. It's
but
fun
it's very
if there's
much a
like,
copy and paste
yeah.
situation versus like me being like, ooh, I'm inspired to create this shit and I'm gonna like replace this recipe with adding this and that. Like I nope, copy paste for
No.
me. And yeah, it's great and I enjoy it, but it's very
Right.
much, this is how I learned it. And so like for example, very simple example is like you and I both make tortilla soup. And we've
Yeah.
had third parties try them.
Yeah.
And obviously they have their opinions of it.
Yeah.
And so when they tasted your tortilla soup, they all were kind of like in agreement that yours is better than mine. And I was like, you know what? Totally agree. The only situation is like, I can't do that. I
Can't
can't.
do that.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Like, I learned the recipe this way. I can't experiment with it. There's no way I'm going to learn another recipe. It is what it is kind of situation.
That is nuts to me.
Yeah, the kitchen is my weakness. I cannot.
Wow. No, no, I'm like legitimately, guys, like I'm shocked because weirdly, to me, that's like the easiest place to be like,
Yeah.
we'll see what happens. Boop, boop,
Nope.
boop, boop.
Not for me. Yeah.
Wow.
You can
Okay.
ask my boyfriend. Like I've learned a couple recipes from him, but there's no way like he can make see that's another thing. As a scientist, super smart.
Yeah, he
you
can
know?
make, yeah, yeah.
He also will mention he's not creative, but when it comes to the kitchen, he is a true creative. Like I don't know how he does it. Maybe he Googles recipes or whatever. But let's say we're missing an ingredient or whatever, like he'll replace it with another thing and then mix it with
Yeah.
some other shit and make something out of it. I can't do that.
Oh, wow.
Legitimately can't do that.
Okay. See, that's crazy. Yeah, because I'm very much like that. I'm like, oh, if I don't have this, oh, I could probably do this and mix this and do that and it'll be fine. Like it's gonna
Right.
be no big deal. Which is funny. That actually explains a lot. Because when they were here, guys, visiting while they were moving up, while they were at my house, it killed me because whatever I was making, Fonzie's boyfriend was like, "What? Pay attention." It's like, look at what she's doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, which now that makes sense because he knows you have to know how each step goes
Yeah.
because you don't want to deviate from
Yeah.
steps.
Right.
That is fascinating, Fonzie. I had no freaking idea about this, guys.
Yep.
Wow.
I love cooking, love it. Everyone knows I
Yeah.
love cooking. I am just not creative. That's why I want to do like gourmet cooking because it's very measured, it's very calculative. Like everything has structure to it. And that's why I want to do it because, the whole idea of making something from 0 to 100 and it's very measured. And I love that. Oddly enough, I can't bake. Baking is the only thing I cannot do.
Oh,
Powders,
no.
who the knows how to measure powders? Who the
Listen. No.
I can't measure powders for If I were
No.
dealing drugs, I'd probably all up because powder is not something I do.
No, 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 no. Same. My mom is a baker, and I think I've mentioned it on the
I
pod
love
before.
that.
That woman has, and the thing is, like, again, baking is a science,
It
right?
is.
100%. And then there's my mom. I'm like, okay, how long do you need this dough for until it feels right? I, I don't know what that
What do you
means,
mean?
lady. Like, what are we feeling for? And then,
Right.
of course, again, if you've been raised by a Mexican mom, you know exactly this feeling. And I know this is common across a bunch of cultures. Is like, you know, when they're yelling at you at the table because you're not getting the math problem right, and they're like, why don't you understand about this? Very that. I'd be like, Mom, what are you talking about? And then she would slap dough in my hand and she'd be like, look like this. And I'm like, what are you feeling, lady? So, no, I understand what you're talking about with
Yeah.
baking. Baking is a big block for me. It
Yep.
terrifies me.
Yep.
It terrifies me. I'm like, it's not gonna rise. And this whole thing, you bake something, let it rise, then do it again, then let it rise again. No, ma'am. No,
Croissant,
ma'am.
we've tried them, we failed at them. I don't think it'll ever happen. That's an art itself.
Sorry. Can't do it. Those people that are out here making croissants from scratch.
We tried, didn't happen. Mm-mm.
No. And why? From what I understand, you have to fold butter in layers in the dough, but the butter can't get too warm because then your croissant won't rise. Okay. Bye.
A, a croissant or a croissant
A
is a
croissant.
woman. Because if you watch Barbie, whatever you just said, it sounded like that little,
Yes.
the
No, no,
little,
no.
what is it called?
The
Speech that,
monologue. The
yeah, yeah,
monologue, yeah,
yeah,
from America Ferrara, right? Where
yeah,
she's
yeah,
like, you
yeah.
can't do this because you have to be this. Yes,
That's
that's
exactly what
baking.
our croissant is. Yes.
Yes, no. See, yeah, no, and that's what I mean. Like, I can't, I am blown away that for cooking, you're like, no, I need rules. I need,
Structure, yeah.
that is
Weird. Yeah.
crazy.
Because
No,
for
that makes
me, so
sense.
my inspiration, so I'm going to talk about inspiration for me in different aspects of my life.
Please.
Because,
Yeah,
for example, when it comes to my art and fashion and all that good stuff, after watching that video with Daniel Rosberry, like I really kind of like did a little introspect and kind of like sat down and thought of what inspired me as a designer. And
yeah.
I came down to the conclusion that my inspiration for my fashion is very much, and it's going to sound cliche, but it's architecture. and the era of like Baroque and Rococo. That I think that that's where I draw the majority of my inspiration from.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Um, because and even in your wedding gown actually came to mind when I was thinking of that because even though it still feels modern, it's very much inspired by the opulence of Rococo, the pastels of Rococo, but Baroque in the sense of like all the lace details
I
and
was gonna
floral
say I was gonna
details
go
and
like
stuff.
this. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
The
And
details on the
then the
side. Yeah.
volume of the Baroque era as well. So it's
Yes.
very much that. And then even when I try to do pieces that are very simple, there's not a lot of beating to it and all that linear stuff. Like it's very inspired by architecture when it comes down to like, sometimes I'll look at kitchens, for example, and you'll see this beautiful marble island, and once again referring to my comment about the stairway, the marble island is inspirational because even though it's like some people may call it just a regular rectangle, all
Right.
the textures and movements of the marble create that sort of inspiration for me. Yeah.
Exactly.
And it's
Right.
weird because little caveat story. One day of many, I did shrooms and it was very strange because it was
Yeah.
very amazing how I was drawing inspiration from a marble table. And then I looked up and then started looking at inspiration from a popcorn ceiling. And
Oh,
then
wow.
with this one situation specifically, I made the decision to have pen and pencil ready for me because I had previously done them without any preparation. But I was like, you know what? This trip is amazing. Like, I want to have pen and paper ready for when I'm actually tripping. Like, I want to see what that looks like. And so when I did it and then I sketched, could literally see inspiration everywhere and it was beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, but I think for the most part, when it comes to my aesthetic, I do draw a lot of inspiration from the Rococo and Baroque era.
Baroque era.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean that's the thing that makes sense. And it's interesting that you say that because I think there's always, to your point, whether you're going for a more modern look or to me, when I think of Rococo and Baroque, it's always there is an element of deep romanticism, right? To those lines, to those details, and that's what makes those designs so unique, right? There's a level of romanticism. There's a level of I hesitate to say this, but it's almost whimsy. It's a very specific, whimsical, ethereal sort of turn to Baroque and Rococo styles that is so. I mean, I love it because in my view, it's highly feminine, right? So for me,
Right.
I'm just like no, I mean, I agree, which is why I'm such a fan.
Yeah. And it's
Yeah,
weird because I
yeah,
take that into my other collection, Kursoff.
yeah, yeah.
I bring those elements of feminism, quote unquote,
Yes.
into masculine pieces. So I think
Yes.
and that in retrospect, that's why I really appreciated that one interview with Daniel Rosberry because it made me kind of reflect on like where does my inspiration come from, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then for
Yeah.
my daily life, it's kind of weird, but my inspiration is just um honestly, my mom, like the amount of energy that woman has to do anything in life is ridiculous. And so, even just waking up, because my typical routine is like waking up at 6 a.m. or like 6:30, and
Yeah.
then the very first thing I do is start pouring my coffee. And those are like some things that I would, from my childhood remember, like the first thing she ever did was coffee and then just ground herself and then start the day and just tackle it, balls deep and kind of
Literally.
tackle the day as it is. Yeah.
No, 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 I agree. I think we both share that in how we view our moms. Because yeah, I think both of them, like if I had a word to describe our moms, is like they're just forces of nature. Like
Yeah.
they're just yeah, yeah, yeah. they're
Yeah.
they're unstoppable, they're infatigable, like they're just so I think they also share this is like life has been rough on them both, to put it mildly. Uh,
Yes.
and they just refuse to be done in.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
Like it's funny that you brought that up because off mic, we were you guys know our humor. We have dark humor. We're talking death, this, and that. And I made a comment about how I was talking to my mom, and my mom is 71 years old, still works full time. And she's nuts. But her telling me, sort of being like, "Oh, I'm feeling a little bit tired." And I told Fonz, I was like, "Of course you're tired, sis. Like you're 71. What are you talking about?
Right.
You're 71 working for 12-hour days. Like I don't understand."
Yeah.
And so, but I told Fonz, like, it made me think of the saying in Spanish, mala hierba nunca muere, which is like, it basically translates to you can't kill a weed, essentially. And I think that's what it is. Like, these are just another saying in Spanish is like, it translates to these are women that are made of like oak wood. They're just resilient. They refuse to give it. So I think it's beautiful that like in your daily life, like you making this coffee every morning and like taking a beat, right? Before you go and take it on is so reminiscent of you seeing that as a child in your mom all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
beautiful. I
Hmm.
love that. I love that. And that's the thing. I'm always gonna be all about someone being inspired by those like small acts performed by big people, right?
Right.
Because they are big people.
Yeah.
They're just so sort of influential,
I
but I
mean,
don't
they
even think
only
they're,
gave life to you anyway.
you know, slow
No
thing.
biggie.
Yeah. Happens all
Um,
the time.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
But I
yeah.
think I don't know, also inspiration, like I mentioned, I mean, I keep on making mockery of like people that get inspiration from anywhere. But maybe they're right. Maybe inspiration can be anywhere, and I'm just missing out on the fun.
I mean, listen, maybe. Okay, so hear me out. This is gonna sound so crazy. You guys are gonna laugh. Okay. But there is a falcon that shows up to my house, to my backyard, every other day or so. And the reason why I'm so obsessed with this falcon is because call it coincidence, because that's what I'm calling it, because I refuse to call it anything else, because I'm still too much of a, you know, butthole. Um, but I see this falcon in my backyard every time there's like a big thing happening. Fonz knows there's like a lot of changes going on in my life right now. And I'm not exaggerating. 10 out of 10 times that I've gotten a specific news or I need to make a big decision or something happens, at some point during that day, I will see this falcon every time. Now, I live in an area where there's a lot of birds of prey and all these beautiful things, and there's like a lot of stuff. So, of course, there's falcons everywhere. But now I've decided that that means something. And I think that's important to remember. Like, I want to make sure I mention this before we close out. Inspiration is what you make it. Whatever means something to you. It doesn't
Yep,
have to be this grandiose thing. It doesn't even have to make sense, y'all. It doesn't. It could sound absolutely nuts to everyone else around you, but guess what? If it gets you out of bed, if it
that's all
makes
that
you
matters.
feel, that's all that matters. If it makes you feel like you can tackle your shitty job that you hate, but you gotta go to because you gotta put fucking food on the table, because hello, everyone. Okay? I was like, anything like that, that's inspiration. And it doesn't have to mean anything to anyone but
By
you.
you.
But
Yep.
you need it. but you
Yeah.
need it and
Now,
hold on to it.
for me, it's kind of weird, but inspiration almost is adjacent to motivation.
Ooh, good point.
You know,
Yep. Can you
like,
explain? Like, what do you mean? What do you mean by that?
so this is the thing when I'm sure everyone has been through interviews at some point in their life, and you know how they're always like, what motivates you? So in my brain, it's registered as like what inspires you kind of to keep going.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think you definitely have to have inspiration to keep that motivation. If you're uninspired by everything around you, and I'm saying everything about you, then you more than likely have zero inspiration. And I'm talking even those gym rats, like I'm sure their inspiration is this one, maybe Arnold Schwarzenegger that, they look up to or
Yeah.
they
Yeah. Yeah.
inspire to be. So that's their motivation to keep going and going to the gym or whatever. So I
Sure.
think for me, definitely motivation and inspiration kind of go hand in hand.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I definitely, definitely agree. I think that inspiration is the little bit of wind, right, beneath your butt to get you like up out of the chair, right?
Yeah.
Like, um, I in on my desk for work, I have pictures, right? And on in the wall directly in front of me for my desk for work, I have a specific pictures. And each one of those things means something to me, right? And each one of those people means something to me, right? Like the pictures that I have on my desk are of, the people that are very close to me. The stuff that's on my actual wall, Fawn's made with his actual hands, and I have it framed and it's up in my wall. So that is very, very important to me, right? It's one of those things where it's like surround yourself with as much as you can with objects or visual things that you're like, that's either connected to a person that gives me, the oomph to push forward or the desire, like Fawn said, the motivation to push and to do and to be. Put that around you. Surround yourself with those things because the brain is highly visual, whether we want to think about it that way or not. It's highly visual. So what you put around you should motivate you. It shouldn't bring you pain or anything like that. It should be something that makes you want to do and achieve the things that you want for you. Again, highly subjective. You know what I mean? It can be anything. Like for example, I have um an image of the Virgin of Guadalupe. I'm not a religious person. Everyone knows that. But when I look at it, I think of my ancestors. And I think of all the women before me who were largely, you know, religious, but I look up to them a lot. And it's a way for me to honor them and their memory. It's not about the religious effigy,
Yeah, the
it's what about it
physical meaning.
represents.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yes.
for sure.
So, yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
important, guys. Make sure you surround yourself with that so that you can be motivated
Yep.
once you're inspired. I love that, Fonzie. That's a great point. In order to be motivated, you have to be inspired. You're right.
Yep.
I love that. Yeah,
Yeah. I
yeah,
think that's my closing statement.
yeah.
Like you mentioned, surround yourself with things that inspire you in order to motivate you for sure.
Yeah, no, no, no. I agree. I agree. And again, I want to make sure that we close out with, and when it comes to inspiration and motivation, all these things is you can't let them win. Whatever them means to you, right? If it's the horrendous politics going on, if it's a family member, if it's your shitty partner,
Or if it's like RuPaul would say, your internal demons.
if it's your internal demons, yeah, exactly. If it's
You,
any of these
what did she
things,
say? She says your internal sabotage. There you go.
Yeah, because we all do it, guys. We all do it. 9 times out of 10, we're our own worst enemy.
Hmm.
Almost every time. So, whatever it takes to make sure that the proverbial they, doesn't win and that the world gets to see you. That's it, right?
Yeah,
Um, and remember, I think we're all trying to achieve the same thing, right? Which is
which is our first episode, happiness.
happiness. Yeah. So whatever that means. And so, yeah, I just, and also I'm so curious, like, what inspires you guys? Like, what,
Please, please,
please let us know
yes.
because I may be missing something. Now I'm like inspired by the fact that I love to be creative when I'm cooking.
Ugh, I know, jealous.
Um, yeah, Fonz is like this
Oh,
bitch.
like whatever.
Fonz is like, anyway, can you make a wedding dress? No, bye.
Go back to your crotch.
Stitching. I do imagine if I could stitch with my crotch.
Multitasking at its finest.
Now that is worthy of OnlyFans. Um,
Um, yeah.
yes, yes. But
No,
please,
cross stitching. There you go. Go back to your crotch.
he said he meant cross stitching and he said crotch stitching, which, well, it figures. It
Deaf,
tracks.
dead, potato, potato.
Potato, potato. Um,
Right.
please, please, please let us know what inspires you.
What
We want to
inspires
hear
you? Yes.
about it all.
We want
Um,
everyone to tell us.
everyone,
Yeah,
tell
I'm sure
us.
everyone's inspiration is different. I'm sure you're not inspired by Rococo or the
Or
women before
Baroque.
you.
Or the yeah, or the
Anything.
yeah, or the women in your family. Like, let us know. I'm super, super interested because I think we all need tips from one another at
Hmm.
this point. Good tips, you know?
Good tips, yes.
And really quick before
What
we
tip
say
is
it,
not a good tip?
just the tip. It's never just the tip. Um, that's general query knowledge for you. But really quickly, before we close out, I have to tell you this. It is tax season. Okay.
Please avoid them like you're just kidding.
No. Right. Do your taxes. Um, and go to either a professional if you can afford it. And if not, just get you some TurboTax. It's
Yeah.
fine. Just get you some TurboTax.
Also, funny story.
Yeah.
Some professionals use TurboTax. Just learn how to work your way around
Just learn how to
TurboTax.
work your way around
Yeah.
TurboTax. Um,
Save a couple $100s. Why not?
as a professional, use TurboTax. I'm telling you,
Exactly.
it's fine. So do your taxes, drink your water, and tell us what inspires you. Well, no, Fonts, if you're not watching this on YouTube, Fonts just pointed his wine glass to the camera because that's what he means by water. But you know what, Fonzie?
Didn't
Jesus, Jesus,
that's what I was gonna say. I was like, didn't our Lord Jesus turn water into wine?
our Lord and Savior,
Yeah.
knew how to party.
Drink your water, people.
Like Jesus said. So drink your water, wine, etc. And please, please, please let us know what inspires you. We want to hear all about it. And until next time, this has been
General
General
query.
Query. Bye,
Goodbye.
guys.